All right. Welcome to the Knicks Film School Postgame Show, presented by BetUS. Look, was that a victory that is going to extinguish all of the points of consternation that have been flying around Knicks land over the last, I guess, feels like it's been 5 weeks. I think it's been 5 days in reality. No, it's not. Same issues that were here, I think, probably going into this game are going to, for the most part, remain after this game. But it's good to get a win. It's good for us, the fan base, to get a win because, it could get pretty ugly out there when this team is not winning games. The conversation could get a little unpleasant, despite the fact that their record is what it is and their overall resume is what it is. So the win was important. And, look, these guys are human. I'm sure the win was important to them too. And you heard Josh Hart say it after the last game when he talked about, look, there are nights we're not going to shoot it well. There are nights we're not going to have our best energy. Got to figure out a way to get wins. So to sit here and pretend like regular season wins don't matter, even though they, especially with what Cleveland did tonight, although Cleveland probably ran away and hid weeks ago, they're for all intents and purposes probably locked into the playoff bracket where they are, but it doesn't matter. The Knicks haven't won a blessed thing. Having this iteration of the team hasn't even been to a conference finals. They are still until we know it, and we'll know it when we know it. They are in prove it mode. This entire season, to a certain extent, is a prove it mode season, and I think if I have had one theme of this year, it is that it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to look perfect. It's not going to feel perfect. The stats aren't going to be perfect. But what you want to see is progress. And you want to see signs of progress that I think are signs of progress that you could feel good about and that you could take to the bank and that you could feel like, okay, these are meaningful. And so you got a crappy Raptors team coming in here in the middle of January, not exactly prove it grounds. Friday will be, needless to say, against OKC. Shout out to T Squared Social. Everybody come down for the watch party. We're running it back again, hopefully with a different result this time. That's a prove it game. Tonight, Raptors are not a prove it type of opponent, but for the Knicks where they're at right now, having lost 3 games in a row, in somewhat dispiriting fashion, I would argue that each one was more dispiriting than the previous one. The OKC game wasn't dispiriting, but look, they still got ran off the court. In the fourth quarter, he got outscored by 18. It didn't matter who the opponent was tonight, frankly. Anybody other than the Wizards, I don't know, maybe the Jazz. It did not matter who the opponent was tonight. And by the way, this was a game for 3 quarters. This was a game. The Knicks ended up going up by 26 in the fourth quarter, and we'll talk about some of the reasons why they ended up running away with this game. But this was absolutely a game. I'm not going to say who it was. He knows who he is, and those who are on the halftime know who he is. But I had someone on the halftime Zoom predicting that the Knicks were going to get blown out in the second half. But here's, God's honest truth. I disagreed at the time. I said I would be very surprised if that happened. But based on the way they've been playing, if that was to transpire, would you be blown away, or would you be like, man, something's up with this team? I think it would have been the latter. The fact that they came out in the third quarter, and especially in the beginning of the fourth quarter, and did what they needed to do to secure the win, hashtag meaningful. Now, all that being said, what are the issues that we've been talking about recently? We've been talking about a lot of minutes for the starters. Did that issue go away tonight? I mean, we got a 2-minute reprieve there at the end to prevent OG Anunoby and Josh Hart from playing 40 minutes because that's what they were on pace to play. They both still played 38. Mikal Bridges played 36. Jalen Brunson played 35. Karl Towns played 34. Again, everything is in context. In an average game, if those are your minute totals for your starters, no one's saying anything. If it's an isolated thing, even if it's 2 or 3 games in a row, when those numbers are your averages, and Mikal Bridges' average is obviously a little bit higher than that. OG, Josh Hart, they're a little bit lower than that. And then you start to see what you've been starting to see. So, but what I will say, and everybody knows what side of the minutes narrative I fall on. I am a proponent of like I've said, I don't know how many different ways I could say it. I watched shit basketball for the vast majority of my life because an organization not only didn't know how to win, they didn't seem to care about winning. And they went out and they hired the guy who cares about winning more than anything. He cares about breathing. So I am always going to take whatever lumps come with that decision because to me, it's worth it 10 times out of 10. Can I sit here and say the minutes aren't taking their toll? I don't know for sure, but I do. And again, I'll shout out to Halftime Zoom, Ben Kingervy got on there at halftime. He said, forget the minutes. I didn't like their energy from the start, and I kind of agreed with him. Their energy from the start was a little like wishy-washy. It was like kind of how they started the Orlando game, pussyfooting around a little bit, not really going for the throat like we saw as the game went on in the second half and in the beginning of the fourth quarter. That's the Knicks team that we know that has been at their best this year. The team that puts the clamps down on defense, which we know they're capable of doing from time to time. I thought they absolutely did it at the start of the fourth quarter, and obviously runs you off the court on offense. And like I thought their energy looked pretty good there in that stretch of the game in the second half after all those guys had already played at or around 30 minutes. So I think there's always two sides of the argument with this stuff. It's like people are going to have their thing that they want to believe, and then they're going to latch on to the evidence that supports their argument. And then when there's evidence that is maybe not as supportive of their argument, they're going to kind of dismiss that. And that goes for everybody. That goes for whatever side of the argument you're on, So minutes thing, not going away with this game. Shooting struggles, not necessarily going away with this game either. Jalen Brunson, it was lovely to see him hit that step back three to start the second half. Took two more, after attempting only one 3-pointer in the first half, after attempting only one 3-pointer against Orlando, and it was a three he didn't even want to take. It was at the end of the clock. Took two more threes in the second half after making that step back. Didn't make either of them. One was a nice catch and shoot opportunity that didn't go in. So I whether he, has started to correct his shooting slump remains to be seen. Mikal Bridges all of a sudden is in a little bit of a slump. It was nice to see him hit his last three and still ended up 2 for 11 on the night from deep. Other than that, I thought he played a pretty good game. His shot wasn't on tonight. And then I've been talking for a while now, and I haven't mentioned the biggest difference between this game and the Orlando game. And as should surprise nobody, I am going to bring up Karl-Anthony Towns. When they made the trade for Cat, at no time did I even entertain the notion. And I'm anybody who thinks I'm not a huge Karl-Anthony Towns fan, go watch my trade reaction. Go watch anything I've said about the guy since the Knicks have gotten him. The talent and the ability to use that talent to prop up everything else you do on the floor, especially obviously mostly on the offensive end, is, I mean, it's top notch. Still, never in a million years did I think that anyone other than Jalen Brunson on this team would be their MVP candidate. And the early MVP, ladder articles started coming out, and there was Towns there, and it wasn't Brunson. He was like, I don't agree with that. And even as recently as a few weeks ago, when Towns was ahead of Brunson in the MVP, the straw poll, the Bontemps poll that came out after 27 games, I'm like, I think those guys are looking at stats. I don't think they're watching games. Now we're 10 games, I think, roughly 10 games since that straw poll came out. I think Towns has pulled ahead of Brunson. I think there is a damn good argument that he's the most important player on this team because of some of the struggles right now. And again, it's this conversation. Everything's connected because of some of Brunson's struggles right now. When he is on the court, his impact is not nearly as significant as when Towns is out there. Now, Brunson is still having a positive impact. And you see that when he goes out of the game because there are times where they just can't get into their sets and they can't make much happen. But when Towns is out there, even when he's out there without Brunson, and I thought it was notable that the stretch where they pulled away in this game was where Brunson was on the bench and Towns was out there with the lineup of, I believe it was Payne, Hart, and Cat was definitely out there, OG, and I'm pretty sure Bridges was in there. Bridges had taken the place of Achua. Pretty sure, but I also actually now I'm like second guessing myself. I'm wondering if Shammer was out there. No, I think it was Bridges. Whatever. It was a non-Brunson lineup that really kind of ran away with the game. And he's what a spectacular player that he is. I mean, I should probably read his stat line. Because I mean his stat lines at this point, they're just kind of silly. And we just kind of see these numbers and we're like, what do you like 27 points on 14 shots? And we look at that like, okay, yeah, it's a Karl-Anthony Towns game. Great. 13 rebounds, like it's nothing. Couple of blocks, 3 steals, couple of assists. Like he's, and as Clyde said, he makes it all look so easy. And you know, he's a vital piece for them now. They're not the same team when he's not out there. I honestly, it might sound crazy to some people. I don't even think they're the same team on defense out there. And I know Precious Achiuwa has replaced Jericho Sims in the rotation. I think more for his offensive capabilities than his defensive capabilities. I like just Towns out there, his size, his defensive rebounding. I think he's just cleaned it up a lot. Yes, he still does the stupid fouls, and yes, they are incredibly frustrating. I get it. I am willing to live with those again 10 times out of 10. It's fine. So kudos Karl-Anthony Towns. He is awesome. Also awesome, and also scoring 27 points in this basketball game was OG Anunoby, who seems to be having a just a dandy old time playing his old team. 27 points on 13 shots for him. Actually took one fewer shot. How funny is this? I'm pretty sure the last time the Knicks played the Raptors, if I'm not mistaken, both OG Anunoby and Karl-Anthony Towns had 30, I think it was 30 or 31 points. I forget what it was, on 15 shots. I believe they had the like identical stat lines. And I went and I looked and I popped it in my newsletter after that game. Like they both did it in the same game. And that was something that had been done like, so I forget what I found, but it's something like 2 or 3 times over the course of a decade, like recently in Knicks history. And they both did it in the same game. And tonight they both only finished with 27 points, but on fewer shots. They almost basically did the same thing again. I thought OG Anunoby, was it a perfect game from him? No, but it was pretty darn close to perfect. And when he decided he was going to make his imprint felt on this game from a defensive standpoint in the fourth quarter, you saw it. But the biggest thing for OG for this one is they just needed someone to hit threes. You know, Towns, I'm pretty sure he was perfect from behind the arc. Yeah, he was 3 of 3 because, of course, he was perfect from behind the arc. But we know he does not. He's like, we've seen enough. He's not going to shoot a ton. He only took 3 tonight. Sometimes he'll take 5 or 6, but he's never going to be a volume guy from 3. They need someone else. They needed going into tonight, someone else desperately needed someone else who was confident in firing away from 3 without hesitation and who's actually going to hit some threes. And OG Anunoby stepped up to the plate. Yes, it was nice that Josh Hart hit his first 3 and his last 3. Nice bookends there for Josh Hart. But it was really OG, and I thought his 3-point shooting tonight was absolutely vital. They tried to get it to him down low a bunch of times. Most of the time it worked out better than not. So those are definitely your two players of the game. Josh Hart did some nice things as well. Although the thing I will say about Hart, and this gets us to the other, I think, for me at least, main issue that maybe we've been seeing lately, and shout out to Hot Hand Theory with Jeff and XJ. I went on their show last night, and we kind of, and they've talked a lot about whether Hart should start or not. And I've always been a proponent of Hart starting because when it's going good, it goes freaking great. I mean, think about it. A week ago, we were having, or at least me, I was like, not should we be having a Josh Hart all-star conversation, because was never going to be a thing. But I'm like, in different circumstances, if this team was like just as good and they didn't maybe have some of the other supporting pieces that they do in the starting lineup, and he was putting up his exact stat line, would we be maybe having that conversation? He was that good. But then when he gets a little hesitant and it's a little bit more stagnant, and his lack of quick trigger from behind the arc, like the guys he plays with, when that starts to really be a weapon for other teams as opposed to the Knicks, because when the Knicks are at their best, they are able, and you saw this a little bit in the second half. Some of it was just Josh Hart getting offensive rebounds. I think he ended up for the game with 6 offensive rebounds tonight for Josh Hart. Of course, nearly had a triple-double, 21 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists. But when the Knicks are at their best, you saw it a little bit tonight, they take how teams play them, play Josh Hart specifically, and they use it to their advantage. And in the first half of this game, I did not think that they did a great job of that. I thought they let the Raptors' aggressiveness in that area as much as anything in terms of how they played Hart. And then when you combine that with the guy who's initiating pretty much every possession, and Jalen Brunson not being confident from deep, and he just seems off right now, if we're being honest. It's apples and oranges. So it was nice to see the oranges in the second half, which were much better. As far as the bench goes, we got these numbers are maybe a little skewed because Landry Shamet played some garbage time, but I thought he ran with Shamet for a good portion of this game. Shamet now, with Deuce McBride out, seems solidly in the 6-man role all of a sudden. It kind of happened quickly, but when you look at how Cameron Payne has been playing, and I did not think he did himself any favors tonight. I mean, we had some calls on halftime. Shout out Kevin, to maybe have Kolek instead of him in the second half, which I didn't think was nuts. But Shamet, I thought Shamet was good. He did a couple nice things. You saw him get a nice tip out on what would end up being a Precious Achiuwa dunk. That was a nice play. Defensively, he did some nice things. So I thought Shamet was pretty good. Precious had a couple moments, which are always nice to see. Precious moments, because you're always going to get some moments that are not as nice. Had that big block, which was cool. But again, there were depth issues and concerns about the productivity of the bench going into this game. Those concerns are still going to be there after this game. It is what it is. But I will just, finish up the monologue by saying good win on the whole. I think this is a win that every Knicks fan, again, despite the fact that they didn't necessarily solve any of their problems tonight, sometimes the biggest problem to solve is just getting a W. And so I think it's a win that every Knicks fan should feel good about. I mean, they were up by 26 points in this game. I don't that's not a terrible basketball team, the Raptors. And they came in there tonight with a lot of motivation. I think Emmanuel Quickley especially, because he hasn't really had a chance to play this Knicks team. So they were playing hard. They were doing some nice things. They were as ferocious as they could be defensively. And you went out and you figured out how to blow them out, which you did. Again, it was a 26-point lead late in the fourth quarter. I don't care about the garbage time points to make the score a little bit more respectable for Toronto. Feel good about this one if you're a Knicks fan. Am I going to sit here and say that we should all be feeling confident going into the Oklahoma City game on Friday? I don't know that I can say that. That being said, should anybody be surprised if they beat OKC on Friday? No, I won't be, because that's what this team's capable of. Got to remember how to shoot, and got to do more of what we saw in the second half tonight. But they're capable. They're eminently capable. So good stuff there, which will lead me to my autograph signature moment of the game. We're going to do a shot that in the moment I thought was particularly significant. And again, I've been called out for choosing kind of quirky moments for these autograph signature moments of the game, and I might choose another one. Karl-Anthony Towns in the beginning of the fourth quarter hit a step-back three to make it 89-76. And the fact that this was a 10-point game going into the fourth quarter, and the Knicks had a couple of early possessions in the fourth quarter that I did not think were particularly good. He hit that three, and it just gave me an air of confidence about the game and how it was going to play out, because I was like, okay, Cat's back. They have no one who could stop him. which is actually funny of me to say because I said his stat line before, he was 9 of 14 from the field. He actually probably should have been like 12 of 14 or 13 of 14 because the couple of shots that he missed around the rim were like, you wanted to hit those, but they had no answer for him. And that I think was a reminder to everybody in the building, like, you got no answer for me. And I thought it was just a really significant moment. So that's our autograph signature moment of the game. My Macri 3x3 video, which usually goes up on Monday, it's going up tomorrow. So check the autograph app for that. You'll get that tomorrow. That's a Macri exclusive on there. And go on autograph, get rewarded for your fandom, the whole thing.